Being a writer was all I'd ever dreamed of. The craft of storytelling is sacred to me. After years of struggle and rejection, I'd finally managed to get 2 books published. Small press runs, nothing major, but it was a start. I was in the early stages of drafting my third novel, a sweeping romance set in Victorian England. Perhaps that's why that ornate wooden case, with its velvet lining displaying an assortment of fine writing tools, caught my eye at the antique store. I just had to have it. The craftsmanship was exquisite, from the pearlescent fountain pen to the sharpened pencils and unique calligraphic markers. Just holding the pieces filled me with a sense of inspiration. I could already envision the pages filling with the next greatest love story. To a wordsmith like myself, it was an irresistibly alluring object. That very night, I sat down at my desk to outline the opening chapters. My fingers lightly traced the smooth, vintage nib of the elegant pen as I settled into a groove. The words flowed easily as I described the ill-fated lovers, their longing looks across the candlelit ballroom. It wasn't until the next morning that I noticed something off. There, in the trailing lines of my draft, several new lines had been added to the passage in an ornate, looping calligraphy, distinctly different from my own hand. I didn't remember writing, describing the dashing gentleman's chiseled jawline and piercing emerald eyes in an overly flamboyant manner. At first, I brushed it off as the ramblings of an overtired mind, my subconscious filling in details in a sleepless haze. The lines themselves seemed carefully crafted sentences that advanced the plot or dialogue seamlessly from where I'd stopped writing. But I knew deep down that wasn't a satisfactory explanation. I was a diligent writer who prided myself on orderly work habits. I wouldn't have continued writing in such a fugue state. Not to mention, some of those elegant new lines reflected insights or directions I hadn't consciously intended for the narrative. As the days progressed, my morning discoveries grew more perplexing. Entire paragraphs and pages manifested in my notebooks and drafts from one day to the next. Not simple continuations of my work either, but fully formed new passages and chapters. Each one in that same looping, meticulous hand that felt at once fluid and stilted. However, something was unsettling about the writing, seeming to almost mock my tame romantic prose with lurid descriptions. Take this line, for example. He approached her with the purpose of a hunter stalking its prey, studying, observing, learning about her ways. I committed to staying up famously late one night to rule out any possibility I had taken to subconscious bouts of sleepwalking writing. I made it until 4 a.m., my eyes drooping despite several cups of coffee. I finally passed out at my desk in frustrated exhaustion, head slumped onto the open notebook. The next morning's discovery left me thoroughly shaken. As if taunting my attempts to catch it in the act, the mysterious calligraphic force had produced a fully composed letter addressed to me. My dear little writer, what silly games you attempt in trying to resist me. You cannot escape the inevitability of our fateful union, little writer. This is only the beginning of the wonders I have to share. I spent hours examining the letter, analyzing every stroke for any clue to its hidden origin or author. The paper, the ink, even the looping letter forms. They were unmistakably the work of the pens and tools from that strange wooden case. That's when I knew I wasn't imagining things, nor sleepwalking as I'd tried convincing myself. Some external force was tampering with my writing, trying to intrude into my space and into my life. My mind raced with increasingly outlandish explanations. Had I truly purchased a haunted set of writing tools? Was the ghost or spirit of some writer from ages past bound to the implements, seeking to share their unfinished stories through me? So I resolved to test this malign influence. The following evening, I stayed up into the last blinking embers of night, sipping coffee and keeping watch over my draft with heavy-lidded eyes. And just before succumbing to fatigue in the pale light of dawn, I carefully inked one simple question. What are you? I held my breath as exhaustion dragged me under. silently praying I wouldn't awaken to find a reply. Those hopes were swiftly crushed. In that very same looping writing, there was an answer that made my pulse quicken with dread. 2 words were scrawled beneath my query. "Your muse." From that point on, I became transfixed, drawn into a vortex of fear and morbid curiosity. At night, before blowing out the lamp, I would compose pointed inquiries in the draft. "Why are you doing this? What do you want from me?" And each morning, like clockwork, I'd find responses etched in that unsettling hand that made my heart sink into my stomach. To guide you toward greatness, to unlock the truth buried in your soul, to make you realize your ultimate potential as an artist. The presence seemed emboldened by my direct address. While fanciful, the notion rang truer with each passing morning's additions to my work. The mysterious scribe seemed to be directly addressing me now. Some passages took the form of personal musings or fragmented journal entries, disparate thoughts and recollections that felt focused on me. "You try to resist me, to shut me out, but I see into your tortured artist's soul. We are 2 halves of the same." Other new sections read like taunting threats, vowing continued efforts to make themselves known through my writing. "Think you can cast me aside so easily? Your work shall be but an empty husk without my dark inspiration, little fool." I became too increasingly afraid to sleep, worried what profane rambling I might wake to find possession of my work next. So I took drastic action to break the spell of those haunted writing tools. I meticulously gathered up every scrap of paper and book containing the eerie, supernatural editions, including all my draft manuscripts for the novel. I compiled them into a pile, along with the velvet-lined wooden case and its quills, pens, and inks. In a ceremonial purging, I committed the entire heap to cleansing flames in a backyard bonfire. I stood vigil, mesmerized by the hypnotic licking of the greedy fire tendrils as they consumed the accursed tools and pages, reducing everything to cinders and ash. Only when that last scrap of paper had turned to wafting gray smoke did I release the tension that had been building up on my shoulders. For one blissful week, I relished the silence and return of order to my writing life. I acquired some fresh, distinctly unhaunted notebooks and pencils from an office supply store. I spent hours reorganizing my workspace, ridding it of any lingering taint of the supernatural. Newly centered, I dove fearlessly back into drafting the romantic novel. The words and scenes began spilling forth again in a natural, uninhibited flow. My personal creative touch had been reawakened, free from the dark shackles of that malign outside force. At least, that's what I thought until earlier this morning. I'd stayed up late into the night working, scribbling feverishly until weary eyes and hand cramps forced me to pause. I set aside the legal pad I'd been using, made myself a fresh cup of tea, and decided to call it a night around 3 a.m. Only after preparing my morning tea did I finally notice it. The large dream journal sitting closed on my desk. The plain cover already filled with new writing in that unmistakable, ornate, looping calligraphy. "Did you really think I would leave you so easily, little writer? Our work has only just begun." Those words alone were enough to reopen the sense of dread that had plagued me for weeks. But it's the passage that follows which has me truly petrified. You like your romantic fiction, don't you? Let me share one with you then. A delicious tale of possession and undying obsession.